wanted to be here personally and help kick off our post-event webinar series. And he actually put a special audio recording together for you that he asked me to play. And it's a special message exclusively for you to kick off this call. Immediately after the recording, we're going to bring on Mr. Keith Cunningham, and we'll follow up with a question and answer period. During any part of the presentation from Keith, you can submit your questions in the chat box on the right side of your screen and at any point, and then I'll moderate those at the end. So right now, let's bring on Mr. Tony Robbins.
Hey, Business Mastery family, it's Tony Robbins. Listen, I'm sending you this quick message. I'd love to be on the phone live, but I'm here in Sun Valley, and I'm about to go on stage with the Platinum Partners. We're here for 4.5 days on how to really profit from the chaos, how to really take control and do well financially in the world we're about to enter. When I say about to enter, the changes we've seen already affect our lives and businesses so much. But with the Fed printing money like it's going out of style and so many, debts racking up around the world and so many shifts that are occurring, I decided to bring our Platinum Partners together like I did in April of 2008 and bring the best people in the world here. So we have some people that have been nominated to be on the Fed. We have 2 billionaires here speaking, including T. Boone Pickens. And it's just a who's who group. And I tell you that because listen in for one of our next upcoming Business Mastery webinars, and I'll share with you a little bit of what I've learned here out of this week. I'm excited about this week myself. So having said that, why am I talking to you right now? Well, you're here today for your session with Keith, which is really going to show you how to be able to take advantage and really control the costs of your business. That's pretty unsexy sounding, controlling costs. But damn, if I said to you it's really how to maximize your profits, you'd probably be more interested, and that's what it really is. But we don't take control of our costs. If we don't have that level of precision in our business, you can have a business that's growing like crazy and really not reap the benefits that you and your shareholders or your friends or your family or your coworkers really deserve. So be sure to stay in for this. But I wanted to tell you, I was sitting with my team just about 10 days ago. It's a little less than that. It was right after Business Mastery. And everybody, we'd had so many people call in and share how it was such a life-changing program and how it's the best program they've ever been to in their life and all the beautiful things you want to hear from people that went through the program. And I said, the ultimate thing I want for this program is not for people to say, oh my God, it was the greatest business school of my life, or oh my God, I learned more than I could ever implement in my lifetime, and this is going to transform my business. What I want to hear is, I grew my business 30% this year or in these 6 months. I grew my business 50%, 100%. And I do hear that, but I want to hear it from everybody if I could pull it off. So I was brainstorming with my team and I said, how do we get more people to implement this? Because I know the single biggest problem most of you are going to have when you go home is you've got all these ideas, you've got all these strategies, you've got all these tools, whether it's the 10-10-10 plan or whether it's walking through those 7 forces of business mastery. That first force of really getting in and saying, what business are we really in and what business do we need to be in, right? And, why are we doing this? And, who are we and who do we need? Who are the artists in the organization? Who's the entrepreneurs? Who's the manager leaders? Where are we? What's next for us? How do we really, get some new voices in this organization, some new questions? In the marketing side, what's going to be our core story? What are we going to do so that we really, truly follow through here and add such value that when we have an offer, it gets people's attention, not just the people that are already interested in our product, but other people too. What are we really going to do to maximize our sales or bring on some quality salespeople? How do we optimize, maximize? What are we going to do truly, this week to be able to attack the financial side of things? And then how do we keep growing this by adding more value and creating a raving fan culture? There's so much we covered. So these webinars are my gift to you. There's no charge for them, obviously. And this session is about trying to get you to focus on costs. And if all you'll do is once a week, put yourself in state with your team and take an hour or two and just work on one of those 7 forces in the chart on how to make your business better. And you do that literally once a week, 7-week cycles like this. Over the course of the year, you'll do 7 cycles like that. If you took a month off and you're going to be or 3 weeks off, and you'll be in a position where you'll have lived this stuff. So I want to remind you, there's a system for implementation, and it's not trying to do it all at once. But if you really want, I said to my team, what do we do to make sure people get the biggest result in the shortest time? Out of everything we teach them, what's the simplest stuff that if they implement it, they'd have the immediate bottom line impact on their income, especially if they control some costs like Keith is going to teach you today? And the answer to that was pretty simple. It's get them to implement that 10-10-10 plan. Remember, there's only 3 ways to grow a business, right? You either get more customers, right? Or better quality customers. You get those customers to spend more money with you, right? You add more value and they buy more from you, some kind of way of increasing the transaction value, or you get them to buy more often. So, if you look at those three elements, just since we were together, Starbucks came out with this brand new size cup. I don't know if you guys saw it. It's called Trenta, and it's 31 ounces. 31 ounces. Why are they selling 31 ounces? Do you know that the average stomach that a human being has, that 31 ounces is about 22 milliliters larger than the average stomach? I watched a guy on YouTube who took a whole bottle of wine and poured it into a bottle of Trenta. So why in the heck are they doing it? Because the answer is you only get so many customers, so they're trying to get more money per transaction, whether it kills you or not, right? So my point is how to get 10% more customers and then get 10% better price points or more value by adding more value, and 10% buying more often. Anybody can do and grow their business 30% no matter where you are. So, but the secret is getting the plan to do it. Even more so, when I built Business Mastery, it was a 10-day program that I did it for several years. And just in the last 2 years, we tried an experiment. We said, you know what? 10 days, people think, oh my God, that's such a long time to away from my life and my business. So I said, let's do Business Mastery 1 and Business Mastery 2. Let's have people come for 5 days. Let's put them in immersion. Let them go back and work on some of this because they'll feel overwhelmed since they didn't get the whole 10 days. And then we'll come back and we'll do the second half of it. Well, based on the schedule and life and everything else, I chose to do the second part in Fiji where we used to do this for 10 days because I love to get people away, put them in immersion, have them have a good time in the middle of it all, and network. And also I want an intimate group. So, that group, Business Mastery 2, is now sold out. I think there might be 3 seats that were left at the time I'm dropping this message to you, but I'm sure they'll be gone by the time you hear this. But if you're still interested in going, call the office. Maybe there's still a seat, probably not, but you can put yourself on the waiting list. And if you do, then if somebody drops out, you can still get in. But my point is, I wanted you to have 10 days. It feels overwhelming to get half, but I had to figure out the best way to serve you. So this time, knowing that not all of you would make it to Business Mastery 2, I went deeper into optimization. You remember that part where we went through the 5 stages of the sales and marketing system? Get more leads, get more effective in the sales process, get more leads closed, right? Get a larger transaction value, add more value, give more and get more on the back end. Well, if you remember, we did that example of Business Mastery with the man whose business was a credit card company. And if you remember, we walked through how to grow his business, and that isn't a 30% growth. That's a business that grows 80, 100, 200%. And we've done this with companies all over the place. So why am I telling you this now? Because I'm sitting down with my team saying, 10-10-10 is really simple. But some people, their biggest challenge, and tell me if this is true with you, or at least answer me mentally, I bet you got a lot you want to do, but you came home and you got a ton of emails, you got a ton of texts, you got a ton of phone calls, you got everybody interrupting you, you got all the stuff that accumulated while you're gone, and you're probably maxed out. And you probably put a few things in place. Some of you I know have kicked butt. You've done tons of things because you've already reached out and told us some stories. But I want to make sure it's the majority of people. And again, I know our promise was to deliver you the education, but my ultimate desire is to go beyond that incredible skill set where you go, as the greatest seminar of my life, to you saying, I'm the greatest entrepreneur in my life, meaning you are. Because here's what I did. I learned that and I went on and I implemented it and I grew my business 30, 50, 70, 80, 200%. So I said to my team, what would be the best way? What could we do since people are only going to half the program, Obviously, more people go to Business Mastery 2 in the future, but we really didn't have the space. So the solution I came up with, and I hope you like this, and if you don't, it's okay. This is not a pitch for you. It's an opportunity if you want to grab it. If you don't, ignore it. I said, what makes people succeed is having a coach. Having somebody there following up with you, not taking up all your damn time, but a quick 20, 30-minute meeting, maybe 40 minutes at the outside, where twice a month you're with somebody making sure you're making progress. And not forever, 90 days. 90 days like a fast track to grow and optimize your business so you get on that track to implementing either the 10-10-10 plan or more likely, the 5-step mastery plan, the optimization plan. Because I know we went through it quickly because, again, we're not meant to do it in the first, in Business Mastery 1, but I wanted you to have it. It's just too powerful. It's too useful. So here's what I've come up with. I came up with a plan where I said, look, we have coaches. I'm going to train the coaches to implement the 5-step implementation. Show you exactly what to do, be on top of it with you. But doing that coaching is invaluable, but I think it would be useful for you personally to also learn from me. And if I brought a group of experts in each 2 weeks, like over 90 days, we do, let's say, 4 sessions. They're not these webinars. These webinars are spectacular. There's no charge for them. This there will be a charge for if you want to do it because it's a different level of specialization and optimization and having an individual coach. But we'll do these sessions where each session will be a vocal session. If you're not familiar with a vocal, it's not like a webinar. You see me, I see you, and you can ask me a question. I can look into your eyes if you have a camera right there, and we're able to pitch and catch at a different level. Webinars are, sometimes can feel a little bit passive, like me talking to you right now, and you can't talk back to me. I'm sorry for that, but that's what this technology allows. And in this case, I got to be on stage, so it's the only way I could reach out to you. But the point is, vocal's a killer technology. So we're going to use it to create these totally interactive sessions. And I'm going to bring, like for the first week, we're going to go, how do you increase your leads 20 to 100%? Because if you increase your leads just 20% and you got enough ability to process those leads, whether it be an online business or salespeople, if those leads were there, then your business is going to grow by 20% as a minimum as long as you keep the same close ratios. If you did nothing else, you grow your business by 20%. So, but what happens is you get so busy, you do all the stuff, it's like I tell most people, major and minor things. They're so busy doing all the minor things that are urgent, they're missing the major things that will change your life. So if you to commit to this fast track program for 90 days, it simply means twice a month, quick intervention with a coach. First, that month, we'll have these vocal sessions where we'll focus only on that step. I'll bring a bunch of experts in. They'll say, here's 6 guys will give you, 3 people will give you all the best ways for you to get leads. And I'm talking about everybody you can imagine, as diverse a group as possible so we can hit your business and provide it. And you can ask specific questions, and then your coach will follow up to make sure you did it. And instead of trying to do all this in a week or a day, we'll separate them by 2-week marks. So that way it's time for you to really get it implemented. Second session, of course, we'll go through how do we maximize and how do we really get the optimization out of the sales process so you get better follow-up, better leads, better returns, right? Third, how do we close more and have the transaction value grow? And finally, the fourth one, how do we really make sure that at the end we're adding that value that grows your business geometrically? So that's the plan. A coach who will work with you for 90 days, twice a month, on your time schedule, doesn't matter what it is, and 4 vocal integrative sessions with myself starting it, and then the best people I got in each category to make sure you implement. So in the worst case, in 90 days, you've got this system running that's going to grow your business 30, 40, 50, or 100%. So that's the implementation approach. If you're wondering about the cost, listen, this is not designed to give you a big pitch. It's real simple. Our coaching programs are $3,500. The vocal sessions are $1,200. So it's like a $4,700 piece. You've already invested heavily in yourself. You put $10,000 to go on this program, and you flew there, but you got hundreds of thousands, and most of you maybe even millions of dollars in your business. So what I'm offering you is, look, do it for $19.95 if you want to do this, just to make it so that you're vested in it. It isn't just free. It's ironic, these free webinars, some people won't show up with, but I can do that. I can't do that with a coach. It's their individual time. I got to take care of them. So I'll give you my best coaches, a massive discount because you're part of our family. It's $19.95. Or if you don't want the coach and you just want to go to the 4 vocal integrative sessions as part of the 90 days, you can do that for $12.95. So totally up to you. If you're interested, reach out to us. But I think if you say, hey, Tony, I don't need any of this stuff, I'm totally respectful of that, then go on and take advantage of all these free webinars we're doing here because they've all got killer content for you. But it's just my mind saying, how do we focus you on just that one part? Like, how do I fast track that plan? And if you're like me and you're a crazy mofo that's going 100 miles an hour, it's useful to have something that focuses you on the things that matters most in that short burst and something that you scheduled so it's real because everybody talks about this stuff. Talk about it. It gets exciting. Dream about it. It's interesting. But plan it, schedule it, and it'll be real. If nothing else, just locking down every 2 weeks to have each step done, I think you're going to find it really, really valuable. And one last thing, just remember, be kind to yourself. You learned a lot here. Learning to master something goes through 3 stages. I don't give a damn what it is you're going to learn. It's a sport, it's skiing, it's athletics, it's a business situation. The first step to mastering something is just understanding it. And I know you understand this stuff now, but you understand it more when you hear it again. So if nothing else, the re-immersion in this is invaluable because that cognitive mastery is the first step. But then you got to feel it. That's step 2. You got to be in it again for 90 days, not just for that 5 days, just being in it, experiencing it, or coming to these free webinars. If you don't do that in the program, get in these webinars. So once again, you re-experience, you reignite, you refocus. And when you get that emotion, now you're going to start to do this stuff. If you understand it and you feel it and you have enough of an intensity and you do it enough times, enough repetition, you'll start to live it. that's when it'll get in your body. That's when you'll start doing things automatically. So you can do that on your own. You don't need anybody else to do it with, but if that's helpful and it speeds up the process, take advantage of it by simply reaching out to our team. And really enjoy our session today. I think Keith is a national treasure, and I don't say that lightly. The guy, he's so playful, he's so clear. He takes this area of accounting and taking control of your financial life and your business, and he makes it really simple. So I know you're going to love this session. And one more thing, if you are coming to Business Mastery, those that are coming, there's no charge for this. You're already doing the full program, so I want to help you implement even before you get there. Just reach out to your representative at Robbins Research, whoever you represents you there, and they'll arrange for you to go through the coaching and the vocal sessions at no charge. Because again, we're committed to getting results. That's our outcome. That's why I'm sharing. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. I try to make sure whether you do this or not, I got some good reminders in this here for you of what 10-10-10 is and what optimization's about and some ways to master things. So I hope you found this as added value. I'm going to shut the heck up now and turn you over to Keith so you can really learn how to take things to the next level and controlling your costs and maximizing your profits. Live strong, take care of yourself, live with passion, and God bless.
Good. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, everybody that's on this call. This is Keith, and I'm coming to you live from Austin, Texas. You know, if I was starting this session off, and I'm going to be talking to you for the next 30 or 45 minutes or so, so get comfortable and get your pens out. But if I was going to start this call with, there are 3 scoreboards, and the first scoreboard is called a balance sheet, and on the left-hand side we have things and stuff, and on the right-hand side we're keeping track of whether or not we owe or we own our things and stuff. I think I would put you right back into state. I'd put you right back into Las Vegas, because what I'm confident of is that the skills and tools that you got in Las Vegas from Tony and from all the other terrific presenters, the masters that were presenting to you and teaching you in Las Vegas, I'm confident that if you've taken that information and used it, and Tony mentioned this, and I'm going to mention it again, it does no good to learn something and then not use it. So if you've taken that information and used it, then I'm confident that you've gotten some traction. So I'm pleased to be with you today. I'm going to talk to you today about solving the problem that is. Tony kind of teed this session up as saying, what I'm going to be talking to you about is cost and cost control, and I'm going to shift that a little bit. And I'm going to shift it so that instead of just talking about cost, I want to talk to you about getting clear on why your cash or why your profits or why your sales are not higher than what they actually are. One of the things that people say to me all the time is people say to me, Keith, I'd like to have my sales, I'd like to double my sales, or I'd like to increase my sales by 20 or 50%. And my question to them is this: is the reason that your sales are not higher, is it because you don't have enough customers or not enough people know about you? And those are 2 different problems. It could be that the problem is you don't have enough customers. It could be there's enough people that know about you, but they know about you and simply haven't given you a try yet. It could be that the problem is not enough people know about you. It could be that the problem is enough people know about you, but they don't like your price. It could be enough people know about you and they like your price, but they don't see the value. In other words, there's a lot of different reasons why your sales are not higher than they are. There's a lot of reasons why people's profit is not higher than it is. It could be that their sales are not high enough. It could be that they haven't done a good enough job of managing their expenses. So when you stop and think about it, really all profits are a measure of how well you control your cost. So what I'm going to talk about today is let's get clear on the real problem so that we're not solving the problem that isn't. In other words, one of the reasons that I in my own life, when things aren't changing, when I'm not making the progress that I really want, one of my very first clues is to step back and say, Keith, have you correctly identified the problem? Because if I'm working on solving the problem that isn't instead of the problem that is, I guarantee you I won't make progress. You know, think about this in terms that we're all probably familiar with, either personally or with people that we know. We have 10 pounds that we'd like to lose. And so we buy a diet book. You know, whether it's South Beach diet or Atkins diet or the grapefruit diet, we buy a diet book. And here's the thing I know. Anybody that has one diet book has got 20 diet books. They keep buying new books looking to solve the problem, and the problem they've identified is they're 10 pounds overweight. The reality is the problem is not the diet, the problem is the dieter. In other words, until we get clear on what the real problem is, we're likely to, you know, continue to address the symptom instead of the root cause. The root cause, if I'm 10 pounds overweight, is that I haven't made 10 pounds overweight be intolerable. And the instant I do that, then suddenly I lose that 10 pounds regardless of the diet or the diet book. So it's very powerful to think in terms of getting clarity on the problem. Here's the problem. Getting clarity on the problem requires that we do something that most of us are not very used to, and that is spending a little bit of time doing some thinking. Thinking time. The first time I was introduced to thinking time is in the early 1980s. I was buying a business. It was actually a large business, and it was, you know, it was over $100 million that I needed to raise to get for our group to go buy a cable television company in Atlanta, Georgia. That was the business we were buying, and it was a very significant transaction, and we didn't have all the money, and so I was tasked with the responsibility of going out and finding the financing for this particular acquisition. And I come across a group on Wall Street called Drexel Burnham. And Drexel Burnham in the 1980s is kind of what Goldman Sachs is today. They were the leading, foremost investment banking firm on Wall Street. The guy who ran Drexel Burnham was a guy named Mike Milken, who, you know, for 4 or 5 years in a row in the late 1970s, early 1980s, Mike Milken was making $1 billion a year in compensation for him personally. So, you know, Drexel Burnham was very high profile, and I met them, and they got intrigued with our deal, and we proceeded to negotiate this entire transaction, and we're within about probably 1 week of closing the financing and closing on the acquisition, and I get a call from my investment banker, who's a guy named Leon. I get a call from Leon in New York, and I'm in Austin, and Leon says, "Okay, Keith, you know, the paperwork's done, everything's done. We're within a matter of a week or 10 days of closing this thing." And I said, "Great." And Leon said, "There's only one final hurdle that you need to accomplish." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he said, "Well, you need to have a meeting with Mr. Milken." Now, when I heard that, I was really excited because Mike Milken had been on the cover of Forbes and Fortune and Business Week. I mean, he was very, very famous in the early 1980s, and so I was really excited. And so I said to Leon, "Okay, well, tell me what's going to happen at the meeting, and how do I prep for this meeting?" And Leon said, "Okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to fly to Los Angeles, which is where Mr. Milken's offices are, and that's where he lives. You're going to fly to Los Angeles, and you're going to go into our offices, and they're going to take you into a conference room, and in this conference room, there's going to be a conference table. There's going to be 7 chairs in this conference room. There'll be 1 for you. There'll be 5 for our team." And Leon said, "Keith, right next to you, to the right of you, there's going to be an empty chair." Leon said, "What you're going to do is you're going to start the pitch, start the meeting. You're going to go through, you know, what we're doing, why we're doing it, you know, what our competitive strengths are, how we're going to make money, the management team. You're going to talk about everything. And the meeting will last about an hour and a half. And at some point during the meeting, the door to the conference room will open, and in will walk this little bitty short guy with a bad toupee. That little bitty short guy with a bad toupee is going to be Mr. Milken. Leon said, Keith, whatever you do, don't stop the meeting. Don't go when the door opens. Don't go, oh, God, Mr. Milken, it's so great to meet you. I've heard so much about you. Don't do that. That's just going to irritate him. Leon said, Keith, when Mr. Milken comes in the room, you just keep going. Don't even miss a beat. And Leon said, Keith, if Mr. Milken likes what he hears, he's only going to stay for a very short period of time. If he doesn't like what he hears, he's going to stay for a long time. So what you hope is that Mr. Milken comes into the meeting, is there maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then he leaves. And Leon said, Keith, whatever you do, when he leaves, don't say, Mr. Milken, it sure was great to know you. I sure do appreciate your coming in. You know, I hope really look forward to doing this deal. Leon said, don't talk to him. Just let him come in, listen, and hope he leaves. So I said, okay, good, I got it. I flew to Los Angeles. I went to their offices, got to the conference room. Sure enough, there's a conference table, 7 conference chairs, 5 of their guys. There's me, an empty chair right to my right. I start the meeting. Everything is doing good. We've been going maybe 30 or 40 minutes, and I hear the door to the conference room open. I don't even look to see what's going on. I already know it's probably this little bitty short guy with a bad toupee. I just keep going on the meeting. Everything is doing good. I feel this guy sit down right next to me. I can see out of the corner of my eye he's opened his kind of little daytimer, little book thing, and he's taking a couple notes. Another 5 or 10 minutes goes by. Everything is doing great. I'm seeing this guy next to me close his notebook. It looks like he's about to leave the meeting. I'm thinking, oh, this is great. Right then, the door to the conference room opened again. They didn't tell me that was going to happen. So I stopped the meeting. Mr. Milken stopped the meeting. Everybody turns and looks to the door, and there's a guy standing at the door who says, Mr. Milken, I'm really sorry to interrupt this meeting, but we need a decision on the takeover of Gulf Oil. And I thought to myself, holy cow, that's a big deal. I mean, that's a huge deal compared to our little deal. Mr. Milken looked at me and he said, okay, just 1 second. Keith, do you mind if I just answer this? And I said, no. Whatever you need to do is great with me. So Mr. Milken opened up his little pocket daytimer. This is before, blueberries and blackberries and crackberries. He'd opened up this little bitty daytimer, and he put on his glasses, and he looked at the page in front of him, and he had his pencil in his hand, and he turned the page, and he went, no, and he turned one more page, and he went, there it is. And he made a little note in his daytimer. And he looked at the guy at the door, and I'm watching him do all this, and he looked at the guy at the door, and he said, the next time I'm scheduled to think is between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. on Thursday morning. You'll have an answer at 5 a.m. I went, you got to be kidding me. Are you serious? You schedule time to think? I said, that is probably the greatest idea I've ever heard. I made a note on my Big Chief tablet, Keith, schedule time to think. I thought it was probably the best idea I've ever heard. Now, I didn't know what to think about. I didn't know how to do it. I had to call him years later and ask the question. I don't know if you're like me or not. If I ask you, have you ever learned something that you thought was a really good idea and then forgot to use it? Well, that happened to me. I learned about thinking time, and then I forgot to use it for about 8 years until I ran into a catastrophe, and I pulled that one back out of my bag of tricks, and it's now been a part of my life for the last 21 years. Without exception, every week, at least once a week, I spend some time thinking. Well, I had to call him 8 years later and ask the question, what do you think about? Because it seemed like every time I sat down to think, I took a nap. And that's what most people do. Most people, when they sit down to think, they say, I'll think about that. And the reality is they don't ever really think about it. And so, therefore, they're not clear on the problem that really is. I have people come up to me all the time, and they say, Keith, my biggest problem is I don't know what I don't know. And probably you've heard somebody say something like that. And when I hear that, I always look at the person and I say, you know what, I can imagine. I can imagine that you're not knowing what you don't know is a problem, but I don't think it's your biggest problem. And they always look at me and I say, you know what I think your biggest problem is? The same problem I got. My biggest problem is not that I don't know what I don't know, although that is a problem. My biggest problem is I don't do what I do know. And that's most people's biggest problem. This idea of thinking is a remarkable idea. In fact, I would challenge you, if you're on this call, I would challenge you to go back and look at your day timer. However you keep track of your calendar, and look at the last 12 months. Look at 2010, the entire calendar year, and find one entry in your calendar that says thinking time. I don't think you could do it. I've yet to meet somebody who's got thinking time in their calendar, and yet, when you stop to think about it, business is an intellectual sport. The people who choose to play business, the game of business, with their emotions, their gut, and their glands, get slaughtered every single time. The people who are the best at business realize that business is a thinking sport. It requires skills and tools. It requires that you search and find and solve, identify, diagnose, and solve the problem that is and not the problem that isn't. When I called Mr. Milken years later and I said, what in the world do you think about during thinking time? He said, he told me, he said, well, what I do before I sit down to think is I ask myself a couple of questions. I write them down on a piece of paper. And then when I sit and think, I'm thinking about these particular questions. And I said, well, like, what's an example of a question you might ask yourself, Mr. Milken? And he said, well, an example might be, what don't I see? And I thought about that, and I went, boy, that is a great question. Because what costs me money is what I don't see. You know, I've had the experience where I got excited about an idea, I got excited about a deal, I got excited about a growth strategy, and I began investing in that with my emotions, which is what excitement is, and then, you know, maybe I took a little action, but then for some reason the deal fails. For some reason it doesn't work. For some reason maybe I lost some of or all of my money that I invested in that particular project or that particular deal. You know, in hindsight, and if you've had the experience of investing money into a deal or a project and then the deal or the project didn't work, in hindsight, you can always see, well, that was predictable. I mean, looking back on all my losses, I can look at it now with 20/20 hindsight and say, huh, I should have seen that one coming. But the reality is I probably could have seen it coming before I did the deal, and I just spent a little bit of time looking for what could go wrong. If I just would have spent a little bit of time questioning my assumptions. One of the things that I believe is that the quality of my life is a direct reflection of the assumptions that I make. And most of my assumptions are unquestioned. I never sit down and ask the question, well, I wonder what assumptions I'm making to give me what I see. So I'm a huge believer in solving the problem that is. And if we relate this to and this, by the way, works in every aspect of your life, but if we relate it to purely a business discussion, which is how Tony teed up this conversation, if we relate it to only a business discussion, then you would ask the question, wait a second, why aren't my profits twice what they are? Why aren't my sales twice what they are? Why is my business struggling? What is the real problem? and let's get busy on solving the problem that is instead of the problem that isn't. If I could just give you one piece of advice, it would be this. I think you're crazy if you don't set aside time to think about your problems. If you're like my tendency is to have a knee-jerk reaction, to solve problems on the fly. You know, I think I'm pretty good at what I do. I'm, probably a little bit above average in terms of intelligence, and I'm not the smartest guy who ever lived, but I'm not the dumbest guy either. And so I look at it and say, well, I can figure this out. And my tendency is to try to figure things out on the fly instead of setting aside 30 or 45 minutes to sit down and think. I'll tell you how important thinking is to me. It's so important that I have a thinking chair. The only time I sit in this chair is when I decide to sit down and think. That's a very powerful concept, this idea of setting aside thinking. And as I said, if I could only give you one piece of advice, it would be the advice of, why don't you make up a couple questions and then set aside 30 minutes and sit down, turn off the phone, turn off the email, turn off the text, close the door, and just sit and study and think about, I wonder what it is I don't see. I wonder what could go wrong. I wonder what some different possibilities. How can I create some different choices? Thinking time is exceptionally powerful when it comes to solving the problem that is. I love this quote. All a man's miseries derive from not being able to sit quietly in a room and think. I think that's right. The WB at the bottom stands for Warren Buffett, probably somebody we should listen to. Think about it this way. Here's another way to think about it. All of us have an is line in our life. This is the way it looks. This is called the point A. And most of us don't tell the truth about what is. Most of us are addicted to figuring out what it should look like. Most of us are addicted to the idea of goal setting. And I'm a big believer in goal setting, except that we all are experts in goal setting, and rarely do we find someone who's an expert in goal achievement. And the big problem, it seems to me, is not that we're not clear on what we want. The big problem is we're not clear on what is. We're not clear on where we really are. So we want to get from point A to point B. We're clear on point B, but we're not very clear on point A. That's why I call that the point A problem. And then what we do is we say, well, the difference between the way it looks and the way I'd like for it to look is called the problem. And the reality is that's not really the problem. The difference between the way it is and the way we'd like for it to be is not really the problem. What the difference is really the symptom. So, if I weigh 200 pounds and I'd like to weigh 190 pounds, the is I weigh 200, the ought is 190. The problem is not that 10 pounds. The 10 pounds is the symptom. And we have to begin learning to think about what is the core underlying root problem. If our sales aren't twice as big as what they are right now, we'd like to grow our sales by 20% or 50%, or we'd like for our profits or our cash flow or our culture, or pick some part of our business. We tend to throw our resources at the symptom and not the cause. And when you throw resources at the symptom, things rarely change. At least they don't change in the way we'd like. So the difference between what is and what ought is the symptom, and what we tend to do is we tend to look for a global intergalactic solution that will somehow address that problem, even though it's not really the problem. We tend to look for some intergalactically global solution that will solve the problem in 15 minutes with no muss, no fuss, no sweat. We can do it at our kitchen table, 15 minutes, sitting in our bathrobe once a week. And the reality is life doesn't work that way. So there's three issues that, to me, prevent us from making the progress we'd really like to make with our businesses or our lives, any aspect of our lives. Problem number one is we do a poor job of point A. We don't tell the truth, and we rarely have somebody around us who will tell us the truth. It's one of the reasons why what Tony just suggested to you is a world-class idea. What Tony just suggested to you is to get a coach. Having a coach is the ultimate form of leverage. There's no form of leverage that is more robust or will give you the results that you want quicker than having a coach. Having somebody who can watch you swing. Sandy, my wife and I were at the Masters several years ago, a couple years ago, and Tiger Woods is on the practice range, and we're watching Tiger Woods, hit golf balls, and we literally are probably 5 feet away from him, and we're watching him hit, and he's got 5 people around him, and these 5 people are watching him swing. Now, why would the greatest golfer in the world at the time? Why would he have 5 coaches? And I'll tell you why. The reason is because he's just like you and me. He can see the shot, but not the swing. That's a very powerful thought. We could all see the results. The problem is we can't see what caused the results, and so we tend to rely on trial and error to solve our problems instead of just paying to get a coach, which is a lot faster and a lot less expensive than trial and error. So there's 3 problems on this piece of paper, on this screen that you're looking at. Problem number 1 is we don't do a good job, identifying what is, the point A, where we really are. Problem number 2 is we misidentify the problem with the symptom. We call the problem what we see instead of looking for the core root issue. And then problem number 3 is if we do find the problem or the symptom, we start looking for a solution that can solve this thing in one fell swoop. I got a different way for you to think about this, and that is instead of looking for the global solution, ask yourself the question, what can I do today to improve my situation? What can I do today to improve my situation? Ordinary things consistently done produce extraordinary results. Ordinary things consistently done produce extraordinary results. What can I do today to improve my situation? What can I do today? And if you keep doing that every day, what you'll find is you'll move towards what you want. I ask people all the time the question, how did you get to where you are? Is it a result of some huge thing you went out and did last Tuesday? Or is it a result of ordinary things consistently done? And the answer over and over again is whatever it is you got today, both good and bad. Bad habits are nothing more than ordinary things consistently done. The stuff that's wrecking your business is nothing more than ordinary things consistently done. The success that you have, the success that you've achieved, is not a result of some huge thing you went out and did last week. It's a result of ordinary things consistently done. I have another way for you to think about this. So I have 2 models that when you're doing your thinking time. Thinking time part 1 is, what can I do today to improve my situation, instead of what can I do today to solve my problem. There's another model that I want to show you, and I call it the goal achievement process, or the GAP. And the way the goal achievement process is set up is that, we all have some outcome that we want, some goal, some promise that we've made. And if it's in a business context, we may say we want to double our profits or increase our cash flow or, do a better job with our sales or our culture or our team. One of the problems that we all tend to have is that we haven't made our goals non-negotiable. And to me, if you want what you want, really want what you want, there's a difference between deciding and committing. Decision is kind of a mental process, and committing is like an all-in process. I mean, it's non-negotiable. And to me, one of the reasons more people don't have what they want with their business or in any aspect of their life is because they know what they want, but they haven't made what they want non-negotiable. Then look and say, well, what is the reality of my situation? You know, where am I? This is the is-ought that you saw on the prior page. And the problem that most of us have, I know I have this, is, you know, being able to be really candid and honest with myself about what the true facts of the situation are. Once I kind of have this differentiation between what I want and where I am, then I can say, well, good. Now I got to do some thinking time. And what I got to decipher is the difference between the problem and the symptom. And the problem is the root cause. I got to figure out the root cause, and I got to be willing to make that problem intolerable. So there's three initial parts to this process of getting from where you are to where you want to get to, of either increasing your sales or reducing your expenses or increasing your profitability. There's three parts so far. There's the goal. Let's make it non-negotiable. Let's get clear on what is. Let's be honest about that. You can't change a lie. Let's get clarity on the problem versus the symptom, and let's make the problem intolerable. Now, once I've done this, I now have the ability to think about building a machine. The machine is there. It's designed to solve the problem. And you know, there's various parts to a machine. I mean, one part is you got to design it. Another part is you got to execute. You got to have people and resources. All of that is part of a machine. So this chart could get very complex. But you stop and think about your own business. Stop and think about your own situation, and think about, this is thinking time, think about the number of machines that you've built to address the symptom and not the underlying core problem. And when you build a machine that isn't addressing the problem, you make very little progress, if any, towards the goal that you have, which is why most people are stuck in their businesses. It's why most people are stuck in their lives. Once you build a machine, the machine is then going to give you some kind of output or some kind of results. Now here comes the mother lode of the whole deal. The deal is, it does no good to get clarity on what you want, figure out where you are, figure out the problem, build the machine, and get some output unless you're willing to measure your progress. And measuring progress is really about key performance indicators. It's about critical drivers. It's figuring out, am I making progress towards my goal? To me, it's crazy to figure out what you want, figure out where you are, figure out the problem, figure out the machine, get some output, and then not bother to measure whether or not we're making progress towards what we want. Here comes the second biggest monkey in this jungle. The second big one is, if you're going to correct something, then what you're going to be correcting is the machine. So think about this sequence. The sequence of events is, get clear on what we want, make it non-negotiable. Part two, let's get clear on where we really are. I mean really where we are. And that requires honesty and candor, and usually is going to require, you know, a coach. It's going to require somebody to come in and help us. Let's get clarity on the problem versus the symptom, and let's make that problem intolerable. Let's then build a machine that's going to solve the problem, and the machine is going to give us some output. That output, I'm going to measure my progress towards my goal, and if something needs to be corrected or improved, chances are it has something to do with the machine. So the idea of the last 30 minutes or so has been to give you a big picture snapshot on a couple of critical points. Number one, business is an intellectual sport, and if we want what we want, then figuring out where we really are, what the problem is, what the machine is that needs to be built, measuring our progress, correcting our results, correcting the machine is critical. That's part one. There's a whole body of wisdom that is built into this idea of spend a little bit of time thinking, getting clarity. You know, I've heard somebody years ago tell me that clarity equals power. And a lot of times we are unclear about where we are, what the problem is. We just race around and build machine after machine after machine, which is a colossal waste of resources. And there's another important point that I've made, and that is the progress we want towards the goal that we have, more often than not, requires ordinary things consistently done. And the key word there is consistently. You know, there isn't a person on this call, there isn't a person that I know that hadn't had a goal. They go out, they start making progress, but their execution towards that goal winds up getting a little inconsistent. And the reason it gets inconsistent is kind of simple. I mean, you've had this thought. I've had this thought. You know, if the thought is, oh, man, this is taking forever. I'll never get to where I want. This doesn't look the way I thought it was supposed to look when I thought it was supposed to look that way. And that's a mistake. I mean, the reality is the way to get to what we want is to build a machine and get some stuff knocked out every day. What can I do today to improve my situation? I will tell you, in my own businesses, and we own a handful of businesses, not very large businesses, but they're all very profitable. And what the question I keep asking our people, the people who actually run the business, run the operations, I run the business. The question I keep asking is, we may not know the solution, but can we name 5 things we could do to improve our situation? And the answer to that question is always, oh, yeah, we don't know the solution, but we do have some things we could do to improve our situation. You know, if you think back to our time together in Vegas, which, by the way, I loved, and you guys were exceptionally kind. I think back to our time in Vegas, and one of the things that I told you is that, you know, most business owners are spending thousands and thousands of dollars every month, every quarter, every year on the measuring. And the truth of the matter is they're not doing any correcting with the measuring they're doing. You know, the thousands of dollars you're spending on measuring every month, every quarter, every year are called financial statements. And most people spend all this money to measure, but then can't read the scoreboard. They don't know what it says. You know, in fact, for most business owners, they spend all this money on measuring, and the only thing they get for it at the end of a year is a tax return. And to me, that's crazy. I mean, if you're going to get a report card, why not do the measuring and do the correcting to the machine so that you can get better results and have what you want? I have developed, as you know, and Tony asked me to extend an offer to you, which we rarely do, but Tony said, you know, Keith, look, this CFO scoreboard software that you have is something that I use. This is Tony talking. He said it's something that I use. It's something that I have our CFO use. And the reason our CFO is using the CFO scoreboard is because for the first time in my life, I began understanding kind of how all these numbers fit together and what we need to be measuring. It's the tool that allows us to measure how we're doing. The CFO scoreboard software is effectively, you know what it is? It does for business owners what an MRI, a CAT scan, and blood test do for a doctor. It allows you to look underneath the hood. I mean, imagine going to the doc for your annual physical. You're not feeling well, and the doc says, well, you know, I'm looking at you, and shoot, I mean, you know, you're losing a little bit of hair, and it looks like you've gained 5 pounds, but, you know, other than that, shoot, you look good to me. Give me my $500 for the physical. If that's all a doctor did, you'd fire the doc. And the truth of the matter is that's kind of what most business owners are doing as well. I'm not a big fan of measuring just for the sake of measuring. I'm a big fan of measuring because it gives me a tool that will allow me to improve my machine so I can improve my results so that I make faster progress towards my goal. And the CFO School Board is the tool that allows you to do that. The CFO School Board basically turns financial statements into English so that you can understand it. So Tony asked me if I'd be willing to extend the offer we made at Business Mastery through this Friday, and I told him I would. So if you'd like to have the CFO School Board or want more information on it, there's an email address there, and feel free to click on that and order your copy of the CFO School Board software. I can tell you it's a game changer for you and your business. The other thing I'll tell you is I think Tony has made a hell of an offer. And I think you're crazy if you don't take him up on it. I think that Business Mastery 2 is going to be spectacular in Fiji. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be teaching for a couple days there. You know, Tony has made an offer for you to have a coach and help you work through a number of the ideas that you came up with while you're at Business Mastery 1. And I'm simply going to chime in and tell you that I got a coach. I have multiple coaches, and the reason I do is because pin the tail on the donkey is the singularly most expensive way that there is to grow a business. It's the singularly most expensive, time-consuming, stupid way to go about getting what I want. And so I've surrounded myself with people who are my coaches, and I'm going to urge you to do the exact same thing. Matt, I have come to the end of my remarks. I'd be more than happy if there's still time and interest to answer whatever questions somebody might have, if there are any, and if there's not, let me just say that, you know, I'm deeply flattered for the opportunity to you know, support Tony and support Robbins' organization, to support you, Matt, and the work that you're doing in educating business owners on how they can do a better job of getting what they want. So thank you for the opportunity, and as I said, if I'm going to turn it back to you, and if there's questions, I'd be happy to help.
There are, and thank you, Keith. You know, I can't say enough about you and your contribution to our organization, you know, whether it's working with us over the years at Wealth Mastery or, you know, taking our Business Mastery programs to the next level. So thank you for you and your organization as well.
Thank you.
So there are a couple things that have come in, and anybody that wants to ask Keith a question, please, now is the time to type that in. But a few have come in. A few people have asked for the phone number again relating to the program that Tony was mentioning at the very beginning. So that phone number is 888-732-4336. That's 888-732-4336. And Keith, I'm going to jump in and start with some questions for you. Question 1, back to thinking time. What are the top 5 questions you asked during your thinking time?
What a great question. I'll give you my top one is, what don't I see? What don't I see is an exceptionally powerful question, and it requires me to look at my assumptions. One of the best ways to identify my assumptions is to ask the question, what am I assuming to be true that gives me what I see? So I can start with what I see and then ask the question, there must be an assumption that gives me this vision, this thought. I will give you another great question, which is, if my board of directors fired me and hired my replacement, what decision would he or she make?
Well, great questions.
Here's another question. If my best friend came to me with this exact same problem, what advice would I give him? Here's another question. Why why is this still a problem? How did this get to be a problem to begin with? And what could I do to make this problem worse? Those are all questions designed to help me get at the core problem. And I'll just say right now, 9 times out of 10, I am the problem. 9 times out of 10, it's not out there, it's me. And so a lot of my thinking time is designed to help me get out of my own way. I always tell people, Matt, I have a worst enemy, and his name is Keith. And that little sucker gets up every morning and does all he can to sabotage me. And most of my problems, if not all of my problems, started out as a good idea. I never woke up in the morning and said, okay, today is the day I'm going to use my 3rd best thinking and my 4th best ideas. All day long, every day, what I'm looking at represents my best thinking, and it represents a good idea. So in my life, one of the things that I work on is how can I have fewer good ideas? Not more good ideas. I got plenty of ideas. What I need to do is make sure that I don't execute on the wrong ones, because the wrong ones will kill you.
I just want to acknowledge your honesty in that answer. That was absolutely fantastic. Ready for another one, Keith?
I am.
What types of coaches do you have? What expertises and disciplines do they have?
Boy, that's a great question. I have a trainer, who helps me with my physical stuff. I have a nutritionist who helps me with what I eat. It doesn't mean I talk to them every day, but they are engaged in training, coaching me from a business standpoint. And I think that's really what they were asking. From a business standpoint, the biggest thing you can get with a coach is someone that you've given permission to tell you the truth. To me, and I'll tell you the best coach I have. The best coach I have is my wife. And I gave her permission years ago. Many of you have met Sandy. I gave her permission years ago to tell me when my breath stank. To tell me, because, you stop and think about it. I mean, in the last 10 years, you've had bad breath. And you've had bad breath in public. The problem is nobody's come up and told you had bad breath. You've had something on your nose that you shouldn't have had, right? But nobody's come up and helped you. You have walked around with your zipper down, but nobody came up and told you. So the idea of having somebody around you who has your best interest at heart, who is a fan of yours is critical. I think the single most critical attribute of a coach is somebody who has a very keen eye, who is a great listener, and who has the ability to say the unpopular. And so I have a mastermind group. These are other people that are like me. It's kind of a kitchen cabinet. A mastermind group is probably the wrong word. It's kind of like a kitchen cabinet. These are peers of mine, and we meet on a mostly regular basis, probably once every 2 to 3 months. There's 4 or 5 of us that have been together a long, long time, and the meetings aren't particularly long, but if anybody's got some, we do updates, and if anybody's got something that's a particular crisis or question, then we use each other as sounding boards. At this point, I don't have a coach that I've hired to help me in business. I was fortunate because I started off my career 40 years ago with 2 guys who were my mentors, Jack and Bob, and And, having a mentor is another way of saying having a coach. To me, these guys paid me to practice, and, that's really the difference between pros and amateurs anyway, is that pros get paid to practice. So these guys paid me to practice. They were my mentors. They taught me what they knew, and they told me when I had bad breath. And it allowed me to polish and learn on someone else's nickel and avoid making all the mistakes. I've made enough, but allow me to avoid making all the mistakes on my own nickel. So to me, it's a great question. What kind of coaches do I have? I have people around me whose responsibility is to tell me the truth. And I have a thought, and I'll finish this with this thought. The higher you go, or the higher you want to go with your business or your career or your life, the greater the requirement that you have someone around you who has been assigned the responsibility of telling you the unvarnished truth. And of all the things that I've seen that have screwed people up, who've wound up being successful, whether you talk about a Michael Jackson or a Tiger Woods or a Bill Clinton, I mean, you just pick whoever you want. Of all the who've made it a long way in their life, their biggest problem was that they didn't have somebody around them telling them what they saw. I can't see myself swing, and so I need people around me to help me with that.
That's fantastic. You got time for a couple more?
I do.
Great.
Great questions, by the way.
They are, and I'm going to chunk. We've got a number of questions around the CFO Scoreboard product, which phenomenal program. And we're also getting a number. I guess there was some background noise during Tony's recording, and just so everyone will know, we will email that out to everybody on the call. So, Keith, we're getting some questions around Scoreboard, and here's a great question. What can I do with the CFO Scoreboard that I'm not already doing with my financials?
Understand them. I mean, it sounds like I'm being facetious. I mean, I don't know what the person is doing with them right now. Here's what I know. Before I created the CFO Scoreboard, I would do all of these calculations that the CFO Scoreboard does. I did them by hand. I know what I'm doing. I have been doing it for years. I had the template to do it, and it took me 22 hours to do the measuring that the CFO Scoreboard does in 20 minutes. I have shown the CFO Scoreboard to Harvard accounting professors, to venture capitalists, to CPAs, to angel investors, to business owners that are running businesses in the hundreds of millions and billions in revenue, and not one of them is doing all these calculations and measuring. And when I show it to them, they all go, holy cow, this takes the brain damage out of this process. Not only does it take the brain damage out, it converts the numbers into words and activities so that you can change the activities that are causing the problem. This is a very important sequence. We get our numbers, and our numbers are nothing more than a reflection of certain activities. If we're unhappy with the numbers, we got to know which activities to go change. There's not a way to do that without this kind of measuring tool. So, if you ask the question, if the guy who asked or the person who asked that question, if they're working, if they're the CFO for Microsoft or IBM, chances are they have a room full of people that are doing these kinds of calculations. The problem is that most CFOs lack the ability to have a clear communication with the rest of the management team on identifying the problem activities. And so the CFO Scoreboard literally becomes the bridge. It becomes the the way to have a meaningful dialogue with your management and your team about here are the offensive activities that are causing the problem, and here's the strategies that we need to deploy in order to resolve them. So bottom line, do you have to have it? No, you don't have to have it. A doctor doesn't have to do a blood test either. I think it's crazy not to, but I guess you could have a doc who said, I'm able to figure out what's wrong with you without looking underneath the hood. I just don't know that I'd want to go to that doc.
Keith, I remember back in Fiji last year at Business Mastery Level 2 when you took one of our clients' financials and you actually populated the scoreboard and you did the front of the room analysis on their business, and their business had over time started losing money, and through the scoreboard you were able to analyze that through a shift in their payables, receivables, and inventory, they went from a negative operating cash position to positive. And I think that whole aspect of the program was very eye-opening for us in the room.
Well, you know what? I'm going to do it again this year too. If people will send in their financial statements, and I know you'll communicate with them about this, Matt, but people that come to Business Mastery 2, Tony does a hot seat or an intervention. I know Chet does hot seats. I'm going to do some hot seats as well, where I take people's actual financial statements, plug it into the software, and you will be stunned by the amount of money that you're leaving on the table and how relatively easy it is to identify the problem areas and then put in place a fix that will give you better financial results. I know that we did that in Fiji, and I think we turned those people's business around by simply giving them access to a few additional levers that they didn't know about that were in their cockpit of their business. So, to me, most business owners, have bought into the idea of big is better. And my theory is different than that. I think the goal of business is not to get big. The goal of business is to get rich. And if you're going to get rich, it requires that, you're going to have some sales, no question about that, but you're also going to have to figure out how to run the business end of your business. And the business end of your business has very little to do with growth. It has everything to do with controlling the machinery inside the business. And that's what the CFO School Board does.
Great. Hey, so we're going to have time for one more, Keith. I just want you to know there's many more than one. So for everybody that has submitted a question, I've really tried to take a cross sample and represent as many of you as possible, and also keep the accolades and the appreciation for what you've shared today is off the charts. I want to share that with you. Last question. Do you have a process that helps you take something from an idea all the way through to implementation?
I do, as a matter of fact. I'm going to have to make an assumption here that when we talk about an idea, we're talking about an idea for a business. Is that going to be a safe assumption?
That's safe.
So here's the key on that, and there's several keys. I'm going to try to hit them real quick. Key number one is, how did this idea occur to you? Did the idea come up as a result of you having domain expertise, or did the idea happen as a result of you being a customer or a consumer, or did you hear about this particular problem from somebody else? I mean, how did the idea occur to you? That's question one. Question two is, do you have core competence around this idea? So good ideas are a dime a dozen. The question is not whether or not it's a good idea. The question is whether or not anybody has execution intelligence. Do you know what to do? Is there management experience? And businesses fail, not because it's a lousy idea. Businesses fail because there is nobody. So let me say it this way. It's not about the horse. It's about the jockey. Businesses fail because there's a bad jockey, not because there's a bad horse. Some of the worst ideas I've ever seen have done really, really well McDonald's being one. I mean, you talk about a bad idea. Let's make truly shitty cheeseburgers and sell them. I mean, that's a bad idea. But they've, obviously done very, very well. They did well not because of the idea, not because of the product. They did well because of their execution on that idea. Microsoft has an inferior product to Apple, I've been told. Southwest Airlines has an inferior product to Emirates Airlines. And yet, Southwest Airlines, Microsoft, and McDonald's have done very, very well financially. So here's the key on an idea. An idea requires a plan. An idea requires a feasibility study. An idea requires that you go talk to somebody besides your mom and your best friend about whether or not it is or isn't a good idea. And ultimately, the litmus test on an idea is this: can you sell it before you build it? So this idea of if you build it, they will come, all came from a movie with Kevin Costner called Field of Dreams. And it's Hollywood. That's a movie. They made that up. It's not real. And yet people have this idea of, oh man, if I just could find the right idea. They're all good ideas. I mean, you can name me anything from cheeseburgers to ice cream to shoelaces. Give me a week and I'll name at least one person who's made millions and at least 100 people who've gone broke with the exact same idea. So the key to an idea is not the idea. The key to the idea is, can somebody execute on that idea? Has somebody done a feasibility analysis, which is called a business plan? And is there a marketplace for that idea? Can the idea be produced in a way that would allow for the business to create a sustainable path to profitability? And I just use very critical words: sustainable path to profitability. Part of what I teach in our programs, is addresses this subject. In fact, I have a course called Flying Solo: The Art of the Start, and it's designed to help people who need that kind of advice. But certainly, you don't need me or my programs. I'm not pitching that. I'm simply letting you know that it is a subject that I know a tremendous amount about. And the biggest mistake that people make is they get excited about their idea instead of excited about, can I execute on that idea? Can I sell the product before I build it? And if I can sell the product before I build it, my odds of being successful go way up. One of the best things you can do if you're raising money from the pros, from people who know what they're doing, professional investors, one of the best things you can do is remove one of the 4 biggest risks that all investors see. And that risk is the risk of pent-up demand. It's the risk of, if you build it, they will come. If you can show a professional investor that you have traction in the market, if you can show a professional investor that you got a backlog of orders and all you got to do is build the dang thing and you can sell it, if you can show that, then it removes one of the huge hurdles that professional investors have when they're about to invest money in a deal. It's very difficult to get investors to put money into a concept. It can be done, but if it is going to be done, then the management team has to have massive execution intelligence. I could talk about this for a long, long time.
Well, we're going to spend a few days with you in Fiji for everyone joining us at Business Mastery Level 2. Again, thank you so much for everything you've shared with us today. I know how much value there was. So, again, we appreciate you, and we appreciate the time together. And for everybody on the phone today, we will see you on our next Business Mastery webinar.
Thank you very much.
Take care.